slowly.
like Rust.
Each is an
Yeah.
incredible amount of time.
Yeah, it is.
It's like working a
so
full-time job
much.
for
It's
almost
like,
two and a
for no
half
reason.
years.
For no
With that
reason.
amount of time invested, I finally feel comfortable making this video,
Yep,
discussing what
that's
I would
how I feel
change
about
or add to
Rust.
Bannerlord to make it even better. Some of my suggestions are practical to implement, and others are pie in the sky. But I'll start by saying you don't play a game for 5,000 hours unless you absolutely love it.
I'm full.
So take all this criticism here with that in mind. Let's start with the combat system.
The map
It's
seems
actually
to
one of the best
challenge it,
parts
but
of
everything
Bannerlord,
else
but
doesn't.
I feel like it has the potential to be so much more. One of my
This
biggest
title
gripes
is
is
so
how limited
good.
we are in the type of attacks we can do. Most weapons allow you to swing from 4 directions: left, right, overhead, or a thrusting stab down the middle. We also have some control over the elevation of our swing or the direction of our thrust, but that's it. We can't vary the speed of our attacks unless we rotate our entire body. We can't adjust our arms to attack from different angles. We can't hold our weapons from different locations to gain an advantage, like half-swording or choking up on a spear to change the fulcrum. This limitation makes combat with some weapons extremely limited and borderline unusable. And to make matters worse, shields are more like Star Wars force fields that extend
Ouch, I'm
well
sitting on
beyond
the
the
fire.
visual range of the actual shield. This makes attacking a shielded opponent impossible to hit as long as their shield is up. Imagine how ridiculous it would have been if you couldn't stab someone's exposed leg, arm, or head because the shield blocked it. If shields were accurately portrayed and we could adjust the angle our swings and stabs were coming from, shield wall combat would be infinitely more dynamic and fun. Another addition that I would love to see is different fighting styles and stances based on your character's skill level and culture. If you watch 2 random people fighting, you would know very quickly if and how that person trained. The same is true for medieval combat. An 11th century swordsman would fight very differently from a 14th century samurai, and you would know just by watching a few exchanges. In Bannerlord, everyone swings the exact same, from level 1 to level 330, from Valandia all the way to Khazate. The only difference is their character model and gear loadout. I would love to watch a duel between 2 different cultures and see how different techniques are being
23
used.
black currants.
Now let's talk about Bannerlord's damage and armor system, which is more like a spreadsheet with several errors than a real-life combat system. Damage is often predictable and linear, with little to no adherence to real-life combat. Taking a slashing hit from a large 2-handed sword will be fatal, even if the opponent has the best plate or lamellar armor. On the flip side, you can take 2 or 3 arrows directly to the eyeball, even without a helmet, provided the person shooting it doesn't have high bow skill and lots of perks. The worst offenders of them all, though, thrusting spear attacks do very little damage, especially against armored opponents. There are some mods that try to address this issue, my favorite of which is RBM. Their damage models are much closer to reality and make spears great again. They even add hitboxes for vulnerable areas like the throat
Yeah, the
and
developers
armpit,
suck.
oftentimes resulting in instant death.
I
I
feel
would
you,
love
buddy.
to see an overhaul to the armor and weapon systems to be more like RBM and maybe even go a step further, closer to realistic combat. Armor would be more effective, but effective strikes would be more lethal. Hitting someone in full plate with a slashing weapon would do little to no damage unless you
Wow.
hit a vulnerable area.
He's
On
right,
the flip
too.
side,
That's how
wearing
it should
little
be.
to no armor means even a single strike would be fatal. Another aspect of Bannerlord that is lacking that RBM tries to address is a fatigue system. I know most people hate the posture system, but my guess is it's the best that the mod developers could do within the constraints of the base game. To make it even better, I would love to see an actual stamina bar that is used up when moving, attacking, blocking, etc. It could recharge with rest, but not back to its
Wow,
previous
this guy's
high, as
really
there
good.
should be some long-term fatigue that builds up within a battle. Maybe after 30 minutes of fighting, troops would be able to regain 50% or less of their max stamina, which would change the dynamics of a long battle. Could your army actually handle enemy reinforcements, or should you retreat to rest and fight another day? While RBM is a great step in the right direction, it's not perfect. The mod makes high-tier units nearly indestructible, but doesn't reflect that change in their cost or availability. I'm fine with god-tier units in an army, but they should be
me
extremely
too.
difficult to obtain and upgrade,
Yep,
and
really
be
hard.
10 to 20
Yep.
times more expensive to hire and maintain. Imagine
This video is good. I'm gonna watch the rest of this, but and I'm gonna finish my dinner here. I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab something to drink. Be right back. This time we'll take the time to do those. Oh, I want the other this guy's really good. Let's watch him fight. He's actually really good. We're going to bump it back to the last bit of the section. Probably like right here. Yeah.
Another aspect of Bannerlord that is lacking that RBM tries to address is a fatigue system. I know most people hate the posture system, but my guess, make it even better, I would love to see an actual stamina bar that is used up when moving, attacking, blocking, etc. Cycle that we have.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Another aspect of Bannerlord that is lacking that RBM tries to address is a fatigue system. I know most people hate the posture system, but my guess is it's the best that the mod developers could do within the constraints of the base game.
That's about
to make
right.
it even better, I would love to see an actual stamina bar that is used up when moving, attacking, blocking, etc. It could recharge with rest, but not back to its previous high, as there should be some long-term fatigue that builds up within a battle. Maybe after 30 minutes of fighting, troops would be able to regain 50% or less of their max stamina, which would change the dynamics of a long battle. Could your army actually handle enemy reinforcements, or should you retreat to rest and fight another day? While RBM is a great step in the right direction, it's not perfect. The mod makes high-tier units nearly indestructible, but doesn't reflect that change in their cost or availability. I'm fine with god-tier units in an army, but they should be extremely difficult to obtain and upgrade, and be 10 to 20 times more expensive to hire and maintain. Imagine a battle where 10% of your forces are elite and the rest are a mix of rabble and low-skilled professionals. Where would you deploy your small elite regiment? Do you commit them at the start? Do you hold them in reserve? Do you split them and flank from both sides? Now imagine your opponent has the same army composition and you have to worry about where they deploy their elite troops. Your tactical decision would actually matter in this case, instead of F1, F3 like Sun Tzu suggests. The next section I want to cover is near and dear to my heart, tactics. And I don't mean the skill, but actual tactics in combat. I've seen massive 1,000 unit battles take 5 minutes or less from start to finish. Combat during these times would often take several days to conclude, and while I'm not suggesting a 48-hour long epic battle, it would be nice to have a bit more time for tactics and maneuvering. I've already mentioned increasing the effectiveness of armor like RBM, which does increase the duration of battles, but there are a few more things I would change as well. RBM also changes the AI behavior to mimic troops' fear of death, making units more hesitant to engage in battle and lose their life. This is great, but needs some tweaks. Lower tier units should be much more hesitant to engage, while elite troops should have little to no fear.
I've never seen it.
To go along with this change, it'd be great to see morale play an actual role in combat. In its current state, both peasants and elite troops will rarely flee from battle, oftentimes staying until the last 10% are left. I would love to see some kind of sliding scale for morale. Peasants fleeing with 20% casualties or more, mid-tier fleeing with 50% casualties or more, and elite troops staying until the bitter end. And while we're on the topic of morale, I would love to see fleeing units have the ability to rally and re-enter the battle once more. As soon as a unit flees in Bannerlord, it's 100% lost for that battle, but it would be nice to see them rally and continue to fight. Total War has this mechanic and makes for some tough tactical decisions. If you run down fleeing enemy units, you deny them re-entry to the battle, but you also give up the chance to attack other units that might be causing casualties to your army in that time. Every decision on the battlefield should have an opportunity cost of some sort. One thing about Bannerlord that annoys me is the large battles will always end with one side being completely obliterated, while the other side takes very few lost troops and many injured that will eventually heal up. Some combat in this time period did end with decisive results, but most engagements ended with both sides still intact and able to continue fighting. While I'm not suggesting all battles end this way in Bannerlord, it would be great to see more possible outcomes to battles. If we knew that the enemy could potentially leave the battle intact and link up with another nearby army or retreat back to the safety of a castle, then our tactical decisions during that battle would be very, very different. Now let's compare some of these changes to how the base game currently runs. You go into war with your neighbor, run your elite army into the AI's crappy army, charge everyone in without much thought, kill 50% of their units, and have the other 50% who were injured or fled evaporate into thin air. Rinse and repeat 10 more times because the AI will just spam you with army after army of the same boring, lopsided battles. Now let's try this again with my suggestions in place. Our army is balanced because we can't spam only elite troops. The enemy's army is balanced as well for the same reason. We engage them in battle and win, inflicting some casualties and causing a rout, but they're still intact with 70% of their original size.
Wow.
Now we must maneuver our army in such a way that they cannot retreat back to reinforcements or the safety of a town or castle. Perhaps the next time we do battle, we'll have to take more risks to inflict a decisive victory, but also risk being defeated ourselves. Battles would be much more dynamic and impactful instead of the current spam, rinse, and repeat cycle that we have. While we're here on the topic of tactics, some small changes that I would think make a massive difference would be to add more options for unit formations. Please give us an increase or decrease rank button instead of making us click and drag the formation every single time. It would also be nice to make a formation with multiple units and then be able to save that arrangement and give move orders to everyone at once. For example, if I want to make a Shiltron formation, I need to move all 4 sides of the box to move into place. If I want this box to move, I have to move everyone individually and pray that they line up the way that we want. Instead, we should be able to make a beautiful formation and move them as one cohesive group. One final note on this, there is a mod called Scatter Around that works amazingly with ranged units. I would love to see this in the base game. It allows you to place markers for individual units of a group like along a ridge or a castle wall. This would allow us the option to spread out ranged units to get better angles instead of forcing them into one giant clump. Another small change that would be amazing to see is more depth to the delegate command. Currently, delegating command often means charging the bulk of your army into the enemy without any thought, F1, F3 style. Instead, I would like to see more options for delegating commands such as playing defense, skirmishing, and even F1, F3 aggro. The main reason I would use delegate command is so that I could participate in combat myself. But if the AI is just going to charge in, then I'll often sit back and have to command my units manually. If I could direct them to play defense while I command my cavalry or horse archers on a harassing maneuver, it would make battles so much more fun and dynamic. And these options could easily be balanced by locking them behind tactics perks. And for my final suggestion on tactics, I would really like to see the AI have more than 2 options. They either run to the back corner of the map and wait for death, or they charge straight at you with everything they have. No tactics involved. I know AI is incredibly difficult to program, so I don't have much hope here, but just
they won't do it. You should stop asking for it. They released that game and they were done. You know they are.
That was going to be my follow-up question. If someone has not yet frozen their eggs or embryos but lives in Alabama, what's your advice legally for them? Should they even start the process in Alabama, or how do they make that decision under this new ruling?
I think it's a hard decision, and I think if people have the resources...
Thank you, Forrest. Breaking news. For the excellent content from my stream, I'd like to sub to your channel.
Another state where this is not likely to be a controversial issue, this decision makes it a good one to go out of state to just begin the process in a state where you don't have to worry about decisions like this coming out of the Supreme Court. So I think, unfortunately, there are going to be many Alabamans who don't have that choice, who don't have that luxury, and I think are going to be really have their options limited here and may be forced to figure out what's available. And that's just a sort of a sad feature of this decision.
A decision from the Alabama court has alarmed doctors, patients, and reproductive rights advocates. On Friday, the court ruled that frozen embryos created through in vitro fertilization, or IVF, are legally children and thus protected. The designation of personhood could have significant repercussions for reproductive rights. Stephanie Tsai looks at the questions raised by this ruling.
William, this issue made its way to Alabama's Supreme Court after 3 families sued when their frozen embryos were taken from a clinic and then accidentally destroyed.
Trippy.
They sued under the state's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act. Alabama's High Court asserted the law applies to all children, born and unborn, including, to the shock of many, frozen embryos. Today, the University of Alabama Birmingham Health System said it is pausing IVF procedures because of a fear of prosecution. For more, I'm joined by Mary Ziegler, a legal historian and expert on reproduction and health care. Mary, thank you, as always, for being with the NewsHour. About 2% of all babies born in this country are conceived through assisted reproductive technology.
Yep.
What are the concerns about how this decision will affect reproductive rights and options?
Well, I think the decision casts a shadow on a lot of options that usually are available through IVF. So, for example, if people have extra embryos, they can no longer be destroyed. They can no longer be donated for research in Alabama. It's not even clear what the legality of storing them would be, or if potentially they'll need to be implanted. And then there's just the simple fact, as we've seen with the University of Alabama at Birmingham, the threat that if embryos are inadvertently damaged or destroyed, that could lead to lawsuits or even to criminal prosecutions, which I think is going to have a tremendous chilling effect on fertility care in the state.
Mary, I want to read an excerpt from the Chief Justice's concurring opinion. The people of Alabama, he says, have declared the public policy of this state to be that unborn human life is sacred. We believe that each human being from the moment of conception is made in the image of God, created by him to reflect his likeness. So the Chief Justice there invoking scripture from the Bible in a legal ruling. What is your take on that?
Well, I think this is a sign of the ascendance of the Christian legal movement, which I think is distinct from what we're used to thinking of, right? It's not the Federalist Society. It's part of a conservative legal movement that asserts that the Constitution is a Christian document, that the nation is a Christian nation, and that there should be no daylight really between church and state when it comes to interpretation of the law. And the Chief Justice was making the point that in his view, the people of Alabama have already embraced that position. It's striking to see this in a court ruling, right? This is not coming from a social movement, and I think it'll shift the overturn window and make it more likely that we'll see more language of this kind from other courts.
The overturn, of course, being what overturned Roe v. Wade. We spoke to an OBGYN and fertility specialist, Dr. Amy Avazadeh, about this, and she said she is horrified by this decision and what it will mean.
Yeah.
Embryos are precious cells. They're very precious. They have the potential to turn into a baby. The potential. But an embryo is not a child, is not a baby. They have a chance to become one. But anyone who knows even the smallest bit about IVF knows that an embryo is a chance for a baby. The concern here is that patients who are doing testing in Alabama, they might be forced to use embryos that they didn't want to use. They might not be allowed to freeze embryos, and they might have to transfer everything they have. It might change how you do IVF, where people will be freezing eggs and only creating embryos enough to transfer so they have none left over. Or what we're seeing now, IVF is going to halt completely.
Those are some of the concerns that you also brought up. But 11 states have passed laws defining personhood as beginning at fertilization. So should women who are doing IVF or seeking IVF treatment be worried that this Alabama decision may affect them?
I think it's hard to say, right? I mean, so there are some states where personhood it's not clear if it's legally operative. It's sort of a policy that's been declared by the state, but it's unclear how much teeth, how if it has teeth in terms of actually affecting people concretely. But I think, again, because some court had to be first, someone had to be the first to say, we think that a fetus or an embryo is a person. And now that the Alabama Supreme Court has done this, I think we would expect to see either legislators or state courts in equally conservative states with similar personhood policies being more willing to make the same kind of move. So I think this is something that should concern people who are pursuing infertility treatment in all of those states, and indeed elsewhere in the country too.
Does it end with this decision, or is there any legal pathway forward, especially given that Roe v. Wade has been overturned? Does this run afoul at all of any federal rights or other constitutional rights?
It's hard to say, right? I mean, the Alabama Supreme Court was trying pretty hard to make this a state court ruling and to say this was about the interpretation of the state wrongful death of a minor law, which is not something ordinarily that the U.S. Supreme Court would become involved in. You could imagine federal constitutional claims raised by people who want to pursue IVF. But, this is a very conservative U.S. Supreme Court that's going to be unlikely to recognize new reproductive rights under federal law, like a right to procreate. So I think while that's theoretically possible, the Alabama Supreme Court is likely to be the last stop in this case.
Mary, you are really an expert on what has happened since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Where would you put this decision in the spectrum of reactions we've seen since the Overton decision?
Well, I think it's a big indicator of what's coming next, right? So I think a lot of Americans believe that when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision,
thank you, PBS NewsHour, for the
was
excellent
the
concept
end,
for my
right? That
stream.
the people who
I've lugged
believed
this up
that
to
a
your
fetus or
channel.
an embryo was a person had won, and they would move on to other issues. In fact, I think this decision is a reminder that personhood, right, this idea that a fetus or embryo is a rights-holding person, has been a motivating reason for many people to join the anti-abortion movement really since its inception in the 1960s. And I think we're going to see much more of this. So this is sort of a sign of what's to come, in addition to something I think that will have a tremendous effect on people who are seeking to become parents in the state of Alabama.
Mary Ziegler, thank you.
Yeah, it was really good. The IVF ruling.
We want to begin tonight with shockwaves being felt in the world of reproductive health care following a bombshell IVF ruling by Alabama's Supreme Court. In Friday's unprecedented decision, the all-Republican court ruled that frozen embryos are the legal equivalent of children. Now, Alabama's largest hospital is pausing all in vitro fertilization treatments as healthcare providers across the state and the country evaluate what this means. The ruling could have a devastating effect for people who desperately want to have children in a state that already has one of the nation's strictest abortion laws. The decision may also make the already expensive costs of infertility skyrocket because of rising liability costs. To understand the possible impact, look at these numbers from the CDC. Nearly 100,000 babies were born in the U.S. in 2021 using IVF treatments. That's more than 2% of all births. CBS's Meg Oliver speaks tonight to a woman who has spent years and thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant.
I'm angry, I'm sad, just a whole slew of things.
34-year-old Jasmine York turned to IVF to get pregnant, but now her dream of having another child has come to a sudden halt.
Is IVF your last hope to have a baby?
Yes, there is no other way.
This morning, York got a phone call from her fertility doctor at the University of Alabama with the news. The hospital system is pausing all IVF treatments while it takes a closer look at the state Supreme Court's ruling that frozen embryos are considered people. In a statement to CBS News, the University of Alabama says it is saddened, but we must evaluate the potential that our patients and our physicians could be prosecuted.
It does not surprise me that this is psychologically how it affects the people around. They think those babies are real, and I don't really fault them for it.
Or face punitive damages for following the standard of care for IVF treatments.
It's hard.
It is disturbing and ironic.
But you can't just run around killing embryos either.
The judgment in this case talks about trying to promote families and help people, and yet they are doing exactly the opposite.
IVF.
The Alabama court's ruling could also have a chilling effect nationwide.
How can we help our patients if we are going to be threatened with jail time or fines or crimes for just doing our best to take care of our patients?
Like Alabama fertility doctor Mamie McLean.
Ultimately, we're worried that there's going to be fewer babies born in Alabama because of this ruling.
But tonight, Alabama IVF patients are left in limbo.
How scared are you for the future right now?
I am scared, but I do have hope still that this can get turned around and things can be made right.
Tonight, the University of Alabama told us it doesn't know how long IVF is on hold, leaving many women wondering if they'll be able to have a baby. Nora? So many people scared about this. Meg Oliver, thank you.
Hi, I'm Maggie McGrath, the editor of Forbes Women, and today we are talking about a decision out of the Alabama Supreme Court that says that frozen embryos are in fact children. Here to break this down for us is Harry Nelson. He's a lawyer and the founder of the largest healthcare-focused law firm in Los Angeles. Harry?
This is as far as I care to do this on a video game stream, but it still interested me. It is time for me to go to bed. I'm terribly sorry I'm out of it, and it was a long day full of real life things and totally not a video game day. It was not a video game day in any way or fucking form. But I'm so sorry, guys. I'm gonna bail on you here because it's like 1:30 in the morning. I'm fucking exhausted, and I've been at it since noon, and it's like fucking 1 or 2 in the morning, and yeah, 14 hours is usually when I stop. So, just a reminder, you have been watching Skycat Live. I'm a full-time variety gamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background. Today, all I did was Fortnite. But that's okay, you know? That's okay if some days are like that, when you're just like, you want to do an arcade game or a shooter or something. I don't often do days like that, but it was like that today. So, just a reminder, this video will be posted, this 6-hour and 30-minute video will be posted, 2 videos, excuse me. This 6-hour this 6.5-hour video will be posted to my channel within the next day. And thank you so much for your time, guys. It was good to see you. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow for a long, full day. I didn't know my day was going to be crazy like this today. Tomorrow's Thursday. Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday, right? Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday is slow, but Friday will be a half day for me as well. So Wednesday and Friday will be a half day for me. Unfortunately, I've got other stuff I got to do and other responsibilities and such. So thank you so much for your time. I love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.